Rebels are everywhere. They're the people who say fuck it to the status quo. The ones who won't stay down no matter how many times they fall. Those rare humans out to change the world and share their story. RebelRebel, a podcast celebrating creative rebels and entrepreneurs. This is RebelRebel.
Hey, welcome. This is your host, Michael Dargy, and we're glad to be back. Welcome to episode 43. This is the Make Life Beautiful episode where I talk with Kevin Gray from Kevin Gray Interiors, and it's all about his journey to become one of the most sought-after interior designers for timber frame homes anywhere, as well as his long-term future plans, and of course some sage advice for you rebels in waiting who are just about to pounce on your next big thing. So don't forget, stay to the end for that. I'd also like to thank Make More Creative for the studio space and the support, and of course our amazing sponsor, the Friday Sock Company, for making every day feel like Friday and giving my feet a reason to party. Check them out at www.fridaysocks.com. And now on to the show. Sitting here in Kensington studio with Kevin Gray from Kevin Gray Interiors. How you doing?
Good.
Hey, just for the sake of clarity, can you give our listeners a brief Reader's Digest condensed version about what Kevin Gray Interiors does?
Kevin Gray Interiors, well, in short form, we are Western Canada's timber home and cabin interior designers. And we do anything from mountain homes to prairie homes. We also do some city homes. Timber homes are our niche, cabins, cottages, etc. But we do renovations in Calgary. We also do furniture and window coverings.
Wow. Holy shit. So, how on earth did you get involved in timber frame? Because, I mean, talk about niche.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I actually fell into it. What happened was I was working for another firm. This is going back 12 years ago. And we were looking for work. And somebody, one of my design colleagues, had been to Revelstoke, had been and just by chance walked into a real estate agent's office there, and they said, we're looking for interior designers for a new development on Revelstoke Mountain Resort. Oh. And so I said, let's get on that right away. Let's do it. Yeah. And so basically I made a pitch to them. That was actually Sotheby's real estate agency. And they made us one of their preferred designers. And then we got a job that was a 12,000 square foot ski in, fly out timber home, which has a helipad on the property, and it was like trial by fire. My first timber frame is still my biggest yet. Mm-hmm. And it was for a client out of London, England, which also added some complexity to it. But the cool thing about that job is after it was all done, it has won the world's best ski chalet about 4 years running.
Oh my God. Mm-hmm. Congratulations.
Yeah.
Talk about setting the bar high right out of the gate.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. So 12,000 square feet, that's ridiculous.
It's huge. It's basically like a small hotel. Yeah. And in fact, the client, this is such a cool project. I could go on for hours about this one project alone, which I will try not to do. Yeah. But this particular project, the client was from London, England, and they had been heli-skiing in Revelstoke, because Revelstoke is the heli-ski capital of the world,
right,
if you weren't aware of that. I had no idea it was that actually crazy in terms of worldwide interest, but it was. And they've now got this on-mountain high-end home development right there, so people can, heli-ski, and they partner with the heli-ski guys, and off they go. But that job was very cool project where they wanted to rent it out. So the owners use it a few times per year. Yeah. The rest of the year, it's actually rented out to corporate groups or to private parties. It's a great thing to see. And it's just such a interesting project. They've got 8 ensuite bedrooms. They've got an indoor mineral springs pool. They have an outdoor massive, huge hot tub. They've got a kitchen that is what I call a cook's kitchen, where the kitchen, it's not like a normal North American floor plan, where the kitchen is actually closed off completely from the rest of the house, very deliberately.
Really?
Because when you rent the home, it comes complete with a chef in residence.
Get out of town.
So you get all your meals, all your snacks, everything prepared for you. It's like 5-star accommodation. Oh and that in itself was so cool, because we had to research what is 5-star accommodation.
Right.
And I had to do research on things like, what does 5-star accommodation mean in terms of interior design? It means little things like, for example, if you go to a 5-star hotel, if you're standing looking at the bed, you cannot see any visible plugs on the wall. There must not be anything visible and no cords hanging down.
Really?
Yes, in a 5-star property. So that means the plug just doesn't go like behind the bedside table 1 foot off the ground. It has to go about 20 inches off the ground, so that no matter when it's there, the cords are tied up and you never see them.
Wow.
All this kind of stuff. So that's just one little example.
Yeah.
But so that was the sort of the expectation on that project. And it was so cool. Just such a cool project.
No kidding. So, and I mean, this obviously fueled the rest of, you know.
Got it.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So this goes back further, Michael, is that the thing is, so when I lived in the UK, one of the things that I found when I went to live in the UK, I was living in the south of England near London. That was back in my 30s, and did some design work over there, which we can make back to later on. But when I was there, I realized how much I missed the mountains.
Yeah.
I did not realize that until I had moved there, because all my life, for the most part, I've lived in Calgary.
Yeah.
But when I was in the UK, of course, they don't have anything quite like that, especially around the London area. And of course, I really missed it. So when I came back to Canada and got this opportunity to do this job in Revelstoke, it was just such an awesome thing, because we were also doing some work in Canmore at the same time. And I'm going, I can't believe like how awesome this is. Like, it's world class,
Yeah.
right? So I realized that I did some analysis when I was living in the UK. And I realized that for me to find enjoyment in life in general, I prefer hills and mountains over oceans and flat spaces.
Interesting.
Weird thing to analyze.
No,
but
legit though. Like, I'm an ocean guy.
Well, so am I. I like the ocean.
Yeah.
But for example, when I go to the Caribbean, I don't like it as much, because especially in although I love the Caribbean Ocean and I love the temperature, don't get me wrong, but it's like, if you can't see anything but a flat horizon and then turn around to see flat horizon on the land, to me, that's boring.
Yeah, sure.
It doesn't feed the soul. And I realized that I absolutely love trees. So all of this kind of came together when we got that timber home job. So of course, that's what really sparked the passion for timber frame.
Yeah.
And since then, and then of course, that was with another design firm. But now that I'm with my own firm, we've always had timber homes on the drawing boards and in production. So it's just sort of, I've gotten to know various timber framers around Western Canada and actually further afield now. Yeah. And so the news is spreading, and so I get referrals from different people, and we always have timber homes going on, whether it be a contemporary looking timber home in Canmore that we're doing now, or traditional stuff.
Wow. Mm-hmm. So I love the fact that you do all your drawings by hand as well. So I've seen some of your sketches, and they're like fantastic. And it seems weird to say, but I mean, this is a bit of a throwback, but there's something really tactile about it that I love.
Okay. So there's also a cultural thing that I want to talk about here.
Yeah.
So when I was living in the UK, I learned that people in the UK prefer hand-drawn stuff. Ah. And in fact, they go so far as to do a rendering with watercolor, like a watercolor painting, which I don't have the time to do, or in fact, the skill. Yeah. But I'm really good at sketching. And when you look at what you are good at doing, why go and do something that's a high-end computer rendering when you have the skill to do a hand sketch that looks really more emotive? Right. So this is what I get response from clients when they see a hand sketch, or even when I'm engaging a client in the hand sketching process. Yeah. It's so much more engaging emotionally for me and for the client. Wow. And so while we still do in my business use 3D computer design, because I mean, in this industry nowadays, if you don't, you're missing out, because you still need it for certain things that are more technical. Sure, yeah. But what we find is with the 3D computer renderings, it takes to get a photorealistic looking rendering. Yeah. It's insane amounts of hours, insane amounts of cost for the client, and is that really necessary? Right. So what I find with the hand sketches, most of them I do in black and white, just with a pen and ink or pencil sometimes. Yeah. But often I do color them with a felt or a pencil crayon or something to give it more of that effect. What we find is it has a more, and I think because it has a more painterly effect, or because it has a more artistic effect, it leaves a few things to the client's imagination. Right. Which I think is partly why it engages them. Where if you look at a photorealistic rendering, there is absolutely nothing left to the imagination.
Right. Can you move the vase a little to the left?
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's partly why it engages people more.
That's interesting, because it's a little bit like telling a visual story.
Got it. Yeah.
Right. And your tagline is "Make Life Beautiful." Yep. And I love the idea that you can bring people into their own story, their home story, and illustrate it for them.
And that's how it starts. Yeah, it's really,
great.
really important for me because it's not just isn't Kevin a great sketcher? It's not about that at all. It's about the fact that it's a communication device.
Right.
Just what you said. It puts everybody on the same page.
Yeah.
Now the client knows when I say what I'm trying to describe to them verbally that I can bring this out and they go, oh, I get it instantly.
Right. Yeah.
And now we're not spending any more time them trying to understand. They've got it in their brain.
Yep.
So it's a really cool communication tool.
That's really neat. So what is it that made you become your own guy? Like Kevin Gray Interiors, you were with a firm. And I know I did a little bit of research, so I know a little bit that it all started with your dad.
Yeah.
Somehow.
I suppose the short answer on I got into my own business a little bit out of frustration with working with other firms. But let me put that in perspective. Not that the firms that I was working for were unprofessional or not good in their own right. I've worked for some great firms over the years, both here in Canada and in the UK. I suppose it was just that I found that I guess I got to a certain point in life where I thought, maybe I should just try doing this my own way.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Well, that makes sense.
And kind of step out. It's also because I'm apparently, according to Myers-Briggs, an entrepreneurial type person. I don't particularly consider myself an entrepreneur. I told you this in my notes before coming here. Because I really do feel an entrepreneur by definition is someone who's doing something so completely different. Nobody has done it before. I do believe I've got an entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
And I do, of course, apply that to my business. And one of the things I really love about having my own business is actually driving that business and getting that business and doing business development and coming up with interesting ways of how can I reach out to this timber framer or this client or that contractor? How can we make a pitch to them? I like that part of it as much as I do the actual design work.
Really?
But to address your point about what you mentioned about blaming it on my dad, which I was using that because it's kind of a catchy way of engaging people.
Yeah.
And what happened is when I was in my teens, my dad had his own painting and decorating business here in Calgary, and way back in the dark ages in the 1980s, I was in my mid-teens, and so he was working quite crazy because at that point in time, Calgary was booming. That was one of the first big booms in Calgary. And that was when, for example, places like Beddington Heights it was brand new.
You're right.
And so we were in a lot of new homes. And of course, I was helping him evenings and weekends doing really mundane, painting jobs like cutting in closets and getting completely bored out of my mind, puttying nail holes. Yeah. But because I had that curious side to my nature, I would walk around the empty home analyzing why did they put the kitchen there? Why did they put the bedroom there? Oh, that works. That's really weird. Why did they do that? I had no conception at that point that it would lead to a career, but obviously I had some degree of spatial awareness and spatial relationships and functional relationships in a home. And so I still had no idea all through high school what I was going to do. So if there's any high school kids listening, let me know this. Let me tell you this, is that do not worry right now if you don't know what you want to do.
Right.
It will happen.
Right.
I had no clue. But of course, society right now has a lot of pressure on kids coming through school that you need to have your plan figured out. You know, what you're going to do. I mean, some people just don't roll that way. And when I was a kid, I really didn't have that insight. And it kind of bothered me at the time. But after I graduated high school, I went and I said, I'm just going to work for a year. Number one, make some money. Yeah. And number two, just kind of, figure out what I want to do. Yeah. And it was only when I went to an open house here in Calgary at State Polytechnic that I saw a model of a home and I'm going, duh, this is it. Like it just went click, fell into place. So I started off by doing the architectural technology course at SAIT for 2 years, thought that I wanted to get into, designing houses. And when I left SAIT, I promptly realized with the market now declining at that particular point in the very late 80s that I need to find a job just somewhere. So I found a job with an architect who wasn't doing homes. He was doing other things, commercial jobs and stuff like that. Yeah. And that was kind of fun. But I realized although I can do the technical stuff in terms of designing a building envelope or doing all that kind of thing, it's not really what gets me going.
Right.
And it wasn't really where my forte was, but I didn't quite know that at the time. So it took me to my second job, which was again going to an interior design office who did corporate interior, like they designed offices.
Oh, okay.
And it was when I was there that my first boss there gave me this fantastic opportunity because he said, I don't care what letters are behind your name. And I stopped and I thought, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's refreshing because everybody tells you, you know, you got to have education, like 5 billion years of it, right?
Yeah.
And all these letters behind your name. But he was of the philosophy, which I have adopted today. He's of the philosophy that it does not matter what letters you have behind your name. If you can't do the work, why do you have the letters in the first place?
Right.
Conversely, if you don't have the letters, but you can do the work, why should that hinder you?
Right.
So this goes counterculture to what we're taught today with having a post-secondary education.
Yeah.
Not that I didn't have a post-secondary education, but what he was saying is I didn't at that point have a specific post-secondary education in the interior design world.
Yeah.
So what I did do is I took distance learning, post-secondary interior design training by distance learning.
Interesting.
But one thing I would say, I mentor students today even, Mike, and the fact is that I find that today it is a slightly changed playing field. I think because of the competition, trying to get into the workforce today, there is probably a bit more need to have a post-secondary degree education in interior design.
Sure, just sort of be at the top of the pile, right?
Yeah, exactly, to kind of get somebody's attention.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it still comes down to the fact it always distill. And I anybody listening who's struggling with this whole thing, I really hope this inspires them because it still to this day I see and I meet interior designers who are coming out of school, and there are some interior designers who are very well trained and very good in the training part of it, but you then put them into a job role, for example, in the residential world, and they can't handle it. Whereas they might be better suited to the corporate world.
Yeah, sure.
Right? Find your place where you're going to fit, and your personality has to come part of that, because in the residential world, you are very much closer to the client. It's a very much more emotive experience between you and the client. So when it's going well, it's very well. When it's not going so well, it's very noticeable, because you're working in their home. When you're working in somebody's office, I mean, they're one step removed from that because they go home every night. It doesn't matter to them. But when you're working in the home, it's more emotive. But so you got to find your niche, personally speaking, you know?
Yeah. You had mentioned that you do some speaking as well.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about that, because you obviously love sharing what you know.
Yeah, I do. Well, so... And one of the reasons why I do what I do in a broad brush sense is because I like opening people's minds to possibilities and revealing potential. Either revealing potential in them personally or revealing potential in their home, in case of my interior design business. But I sort of adopted that sort of purpose statement just a few years ago when I'm going, okay, why do I do what I do? Like, I like what I do. I know I like what I do, but why do I actually do it? Because in life, I think we all have a life purpose, but we haven't all articulated it yet.
Right.
And so when I sat down and going, why do I do what I do? That's what came out, because then that doesn't just apply to interior design. That applies to things like in my volunteer work, what I do and why I do it. And I use that now as sort of a statement as to when I'm going to picking up something to do, will this fulfill me in that purpose?
Yeah.
But public speaking to me is one of the, I think, the greater purposes for myself, because I really find that I enjoy it. I didn't think I would. As you can tell right now in this interview, you can't shut me up.
You have a very melodious voice too.
And so I actually do talk a lot, and I have a gift of the gab. So what happened was, this goes back probably 6 years ago now, when not long after I started my own business, I was given the opportunity to teach post-secondarily 1 day a week.
Oh, fun.
In fact, one morning a week, only for the winter semester, which was great because I could still work my business around it. And I taught at Beauvais College in their interior decorating and merchandising program. And I was teaching a course called The Business of Design. And when I first walked into class on day one, I had my curriculum with me, my agenda, and going, how am I going to fill out a 3-hour class? Bang, it was done. And I couldn't believe it. And I'm going, okay, I actually like this.
It goes right to the vein, right?
Exactly. And so what really got me going about that was there I was speaking to people in a post-secondary situation. So this wasn't, kids in school. They were adults, and I was speaking to them. And I thought, when I first went into class on day one, I'm going, what can I offer these people? Suddenly realizing that, okay, after my 30 years of in this interior design field, I actually do have something to offer. I just didn't realize I did. And then I was sort of basically inspiring them is kind of what sort of gets me going, because it helped me helping them give something back to you. Because when you open somebody's eyes to a new concept, or hey, I actually am good at that, then you feel that you've gotten something out of it. It's not at that point about the money that you're getting. It's about the fulfillment that you're getting. And that's ultimately what I know your career is about and my career is about. It doesn't matter. Of course it matters about the money. You got to put food on the table. Sure. But ultimately, you're not doing it just for the money. You're doing it for the fulfillment.
Absolutely.
You know?
And what a great statement to make, because I think that a lot of people, because you're in your 9-to-5 job, because I remember those days, and you slog through it, and you try and find fulfillment in the thing that you're doing, obviously. But I think it's one of those, what could I be doing that would, better serve the world and, myself?
Totally.
Right?
And one thing I really like about the newer generation coming up is they're all about that.
Yeah.
It's
interesting times.
It is. And like, we're old codgers kind of thing, compared to them. And of course,
get off my lawn.
Exactly. And they just look at us because, and I consider myself relatively good technologically, but nowhere near what that generation is.
Oh yeah.
But what motivates them in their work is usually not just the work that I'm doing now. It's, do I have like a cause that this supports?
Right,
that really gets them fired up. Or am I able to be more flexible with the way that I'm working so that I can work flexible hours or pursue another kind of interest at the same time as doing my job? So they are all about fulfillment.
Yeah, and finding that sort of balance and blend.
And finding a balance, exactly. And of course, and in fact, speaking about that, we used to talk about work-life balance. And I find that also a bit of a challenge, because having one's own business, you are working a ton of time to make it, especially a small business. You're working a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And so work-life balance is difficult, but work-life blend is, I think, easier for me to get my head around.
Right.
Because really, if you consider that your work and, let's say, your vocation is really what you're doing, then your work and your life are kind of blended.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way.
No, I couldn't agree more. And actually, I live my life this way.
Yeah.
Like, this is my life. There's no work. There's no life. It's just this.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Which is great because I love it every single day. It's great. And I get to meet cool people like you. We get to,
thank you.
learn stuff. It's it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So what's next for you? I mean, you're building this amazing business, and I'll put links to your stuff because, man, what you create is so cool.
It is. And I love what I do, as you know. And I guess, so what's next for me? There's two, it's really sort of a 10-year program that I'm on right now that I'm sort of planning, because ultimately I want to be seen as a knowledge expert in the field of interior design, with a niche in like timber homes or that kind of living, cottage living, cabin living, etc. And so one thing I'm planning now actually is, how do I become that? And so part of that comes through social media. Part of that comes through doing some really cool projects. So you're getting some actual, grounded experience. Yeah. But ultimately, I'm in my early 50s now. By the time I'm hitting my early 60s, I do not want to be getting the majority of my revenue from project work. Right. Because project work, while it's very fulfilling in terms of the amazing things in the project you're working on, the clients you're dealing with, they are very complex, very complicated, very involved, very in-depth. So it sucks a lot of resources. Yeah. And so what I want to find is, by the time I'm hitting my 60s, for my own sanity and my own health, I want to be doing something that's a little bit more inspiring. And so I'm seeing myself more in that knowledge expert field. And that means doing things like public speaking on, stages somewhere, or it could be doing like a private event where I'm going to speak to somebody, whether it be a group of high school students for that matter, or college people, on stuff that might not be directly related to design, but how do you sort of build your life? Yeah. As well as speaking more specifically towards the niche that I'm liking and that I'm already in cottages and cabins. And so it's public speaking, but also online workshops, seminars, cool. That kind of thing, and podcasts, kind of like what we're doing, which is kind of why I wanted to do this with you today, because it's kind of neat for me to see how a podcast is done, because I'd like to do more of those myself. Yeah. Super fun. And I'm happy to show you all the ins and outs and all the things that I've learned over this, last year of, doing this thing.
That's cool. That's inspiring. How many times are you trying to get out and speak?
You mean now?
Yeah.
Not enough.
Not enough.
That's the short answer.
Yeah.
Is that, I really would like to be speaking at least 3 times a year or running a workshop 3 times a year.
Yeah.
Because workshops are a good way to get into it because you're now actually giving the person who's coming in to pay for this 1-day workshop or 2-day workshop something concrete they can take away with them, and it's viable. They can work with it.
And it's sort of an accelerator for them too, right?
It is, exactly.
Yeah.
And so we've done it both for, I've already done this twice in the past 4 or 5 years now. Once for like some homeowners who are, otherwise would not have hired a designer. And this was a way of giving them some sort of intensive training on design 101 kind of thing, what you would need to do when you're doing your own home. And we've also done it for renovators where it's like, okay, I did one on actually customer service for renovators. Well, not exactly customer service. It was more like, what does the client who is a designer to them, or sometimes the private client, what do they actually want? How do you actually attend to that? What's the customer experience? Yeah. So we did that. So we've done a couple of tester workshops to kind of test the water. So I know it will work. It's just coming up with content and now putting it out there. And of course, that's the part that I'm finding difficult because we're so busy on project work right now. Right. I'm not having the time to develop the content.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like a double-edged sword, right?
Exactly.
You have to do it, but where do you find the time?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. What's the biggest group you've ever spoken to?
Probably about 60 people.
Nice.
The biggest group technically that I've spoken to as Kevin Gray, the person, not Kevin Gray Interiors, is 600.
Whoa.
That was when I was at SATE. I was giving an address on something to do with the facilities management in the campus at that point in time to their annual meeting. But that was just the one time. But mostly it's groups of maybe 20 or to 60. But in terms of public speaking, like obviously people that have a name, not that I exactly want to become celebrity status, because that brings with it people who are simply just wanting to get to know you because you have celebrity status,
right?
And not actually interested in what you're saying. I've noticed that because I've spoken on the Calgary Home Show stage, and I've learned that if I speak just before somebody like the Property Brothers or just after the Property Brothers, there's a lot of people that are there that are going to come and listen to you because they've just been there to listen to somebody else. But what I find is, and I'm not knocking the Property Brothers, they're great guys, but there's a lot of people that go there just out of curiosity because they're celebrities that are on TV. Yeah. To me, that is not what I want. I want people that are interested genuinely in the subject content matter that I'm trying to speak about. Yeah. And maybe I'm known within that niche, but not known so much on TV per se. I find that TV brings with it that problem of then you're just known because you're on TV.
Right.
And they don't care about anything else. It's more just celebrity cachet because you're on TV. Not of interest to me.
So would you turn down a TV show if there's like a...
Yes, absolutely.
Really?
Absolutely.
Interesting.
And I absolutely would. Because of the fact, what I've just mentioned, the only... And I should also say, I do have a bit of a pet peeve about the decorating home TV shows. All right. So let's get into that.
We're going to get some dirt.
Exactly. Is what I find is... Oh gosh, where do I start? In North America, what my pet peeve is it's so much about entertainment only for entertainment's sake that the shows are sanitized and washed out of the actual content that the client could actually use, the viewer could actually use to really help themselves.
Right.
Either because the shows are done in a 30-minute soundbite where bang, it goes from being completely a wreck to a beautiful interior that the client has, or the viewer has absolutely no conception of how they actually did it or what actually went into doing it.
Yeah.
The second part of that is the fact that if they do that, the viewer is not being told accurate information on what it actually costs. Because most of these North American shows are begging, borrowing, and literally, getting stuff for free from their vendors and suppliers and all this kind of a thing. And even the designer who might be working on the job is either giving a large chunk of their time or is not being paid for not nearly what they should be paid. And so what happens is this client sees this massive transformation without either any reference to what real costs are, or if costs are given, they're not given in actual real costs. They're given in what they actually paid or for the products the
promotional placement.
Yes. And they're not being told about all the stuff that was not paid for.
Yeah.
Whereas the only show on television that I would recommend watching for anybody who is genuinely serious about watching a show that is realistic.
Yeah.
Is a show out of BBC, especially BBC UK. They do it in Australia as well, but it's the UK show is much better in my opinion, and it's called Grand Designs.
Oh,
BBC Channel 4. Actually, interestingly enough, Netflix was streaming it for a while, and CBC online was streaming it a little bit for a while. But what I like about that show is BBC selects the homeowners.
Yeah.
And it's homeowners who are going to build a home. It's not so much an interior renovation, but they're going to build a home.
Yeah.
The home is always of an interesting architectural character.
Yeah.
The client has engaged an actual architect or designer outside of anything to do with the BBC.
So
BBC
they're paying for this. It's their vision.
Yeah, the client is paying for everything. The client is paying for the designer, the architect, and the construction. They're not being given anything free from the TV show. So it's a very much more documentary style and much more realistic real life style of what's happening. So what you see on that project that program is what happens literally in almost every real life project, where guess what? Budgets overrun or project stalls because client didn't realize something.
Right.
So what happens is you'll see the show starts off for that episode about that particular home. Everything is lovely and rosy in the world, and off they go and they dig the foundation and everything is going great. Maybe something happens, and it's so interesting. You see lots of different things on that show. You see real life things like the client has grossly underestimated the budget.
Right.
Other cases, it's not a budget issue. It might be a contractual issue where the contractor who took on the job thought they could do it, realized they couldn't. So the client has to change contractor partway through the job. These are maybe to some people listening right now might sound like a horror story. And it's not often that ever happens in jobs that I'm doing.
Yeah.
But what I like about the show is it's so much more realistic, is it shows the viewer what the homeowner actually goes through with the emotional ups and downs, which are very real. Yeah. I tell our clients, one thing I can guarantee you at the beginning of this job is there will be emotional ups and downs. Yes, we will try to mitigate that for you because that's our job, to sort of proactively anticipate things that happen. Yeah. And we will do that all the way throughout your project. But I cannot guarantee that there will not be a point where something happens unforeseen that nobody could have predicted that now you're going to feel down about, and how do we get you out of that? So we will work that through with you and we'll help you get to a solution. I never go to a client with a problem without having some kind of an idea of a solution. Yeah. And that's just par for the course. It's a professional thing to do. I'm rambling on. Where do we start now?
No, this is great. But I'm gonna pull you back for a second, because you mentioned something earlier about, the problems that you have with contractors, and not that you have personally, but the contractors may change, budgets are blah. Yeah. You, part of your particular rebellion is you want to change the way, the home construction or home building industry works by getting rid of the tender process.
Absolutely. That is probably my biggest thing. And if I could say now at this decade in my life, I'm so sick and tired of the tender process, and I'm so sick and tired of why the general population still buy into that. Right. Now, we've been indoctrinated. I say that because that's what we have been, in a certain way, to believe that you must get 3 separate prices, or at least that or more. So off we go. The client thinks they have to go and get an architect to design their house, or an interior designer to design their renovation, and off they go. The drawings get done, the selections get made on the materiality. And now I'm going to tender this to 3 or maybe even 5 people, contractors, whatever. The problem in that is you're going to get back apples, oranges, bananas, and grapes. Sure. They're all good fruits, but they're not the same. And now what happens is you, the homeowner, have to filter through all these different estimates that have come back. Right. And you've started a process, and I cannot stress this strongly enough. You, the homeowner, have just started a process that is called us and them. Right. Now it's not a team. Yeah. Now it's you are the contractor. You're giving me prices. I'm going to select based on that. I'm us. You're them. Right. And what that does, it sets up an immediate negative mindset in the whole project, because now the client is going to select a contractor, usually based on price. Yeah. Sometimes it works out, but in many cases, if they're selecting on lowest price, the lowest price has forgotten to estimate certain things or has deliberately left them out to try to undercut the other contractors to make the white piece of paper look nice and clean and low and lovely.
Yeah.
And then there's a clause that will say,
asterisks.
yeah, by the way, all of these things will be extra. And the client, the homeowner, may not have seen that.
Yeah.
And so the homeowner has made themselves even more vulnerable than they think they are. They think they're doing due diligence in doing this. They're actually killing themselves, because what you're not doing is setting up a relationship that is a collaborative relationship with the contractor. So what I now advocate is this. I say to a client, okay, if you're in the early stage of architectural design, before those drawings are anywhere near complete, engage a contractor. Okay, clients say to that, they go, that's scary.
Yeah.
I'm engaging somebody before I know what their cost is going to be. Yeah. Wait a minute, Mr. Client. You need to go back and seriously think about the process you're getting involved in, especially if it's a custom designed home or a renovation where, let's say any renovation is a custom design, because you're taking something that is and you're drastically changing it.
Absolutely.
You, the homeowner, at that point, don't even know what you actually are going to get in your architectural or interior design floor plan changes. You don't know yet because you're still working on them. So what I advocate is vetting contractors based on finding out the following questions. How do they charge, first of all? Do they charge cost plus? Do they charge a flat fee? How do they actually work? How do they charge? Who is on their team? What is their skill base? How loyal are those skill bases to them? How long have they been using those skilled trades? How do they estimate? What format do they use for estimating? Are they just going to give you a per square footage cost? Or are they going to give you a line item estimate? If they're only going to give you a square footage cost ever, then that's not a good thing. In the early stages of the game, the contractor giving you a square footage cost is a good idea.
Sure, it's a great place to start.
It's a block. 30,000 foot view. Hey, I'm trying to build a house. Okay, how big is the house you want to build? Oh, it's going to be, we think 3,000 square feet. Now, the client, the homeowner at that point, if they're just guessing that, they really don't know. Once they get an architectural designer involved, they'll be able to massage that and then give a more accurate fee. It might come out to 5,000, for example.
Right.
So at that point, the contractor can say, well, if it's, in a city home, we're looking at $350 minimum to $400 something whatever per square foot, or it might be less than that. But roughly speaking, that's a broad brush range. And by the way, if you're listening to this in a different province, that won't apply. But I mean, that's just, they'll be able to give you a per square foot range. Timber homes, right now we're just rough construction square foot cost for a timber home, you're looking at a minimum of $450 to $500 per square foot, and usually upwards from there depending on the complexity of the job.
And is that finished or just design?
No, that's finished. The construction cost,
including your interior design, including
not necessarily including the design cost, but the actual construction cost itself.
Gotcha. To put the walls up.
Put the walls up and finish the house so you can live in it, basically. Cool. So, but yes, so starting with the per square foot cost is a good idea. But what I'm getting at is if a contractor is only ever going to give you that, don't work with them.
Yeah.
But to come back to the whole relationship with the contractor, why I'm rebelling against this system is because it bothers me, because that us and them mentality is so often what is set up by that tendering process.
Yeah.
Whereas if you engage a contractor and you actually pay them a fee to come in at the early stage of the design, the contractor will then work with you, because once the actual architectural floor plan has been determined, how many square footage you're dealing with, or in a case of a renovation, what is the actual scope of work? Are we adding to your house, or is it within the existing square footage? And then within that existing square footage, what is the complexity of what we're actually doing?
Yeah.
Because the same square footage of house could be completely different cost points depending on the complexity of the interiors. Anyway, if you bring the contractor in at that stage in the game, they can then work with you to say, okay, this idea that the designer or architect has brought up is a great idea. Here's how I think we can do that for less cost.
Yeah.
Oh, and by the way, that idea that's coming up is going to cost more. So do we want to mitigate that now by coming up with a different idea? So they are invaluable to have at the interior design and architectural design phase, because now they're working with you. They're actually on the side of the client.
Right. And I'm thinking that, when you hit those lows that you mentioned earlier, that, this, now you're all pulling together as a team to come out of it. Because
Absolutely. But
everybody wants the best thing at the end.
Absolutely wants the best thing. And so the client, so if the contractors bought in early in the design stage, now they know when they do pricing, they are a million miles ahead of the game because they can give the client a much more accurate price because they've been involved in the design process.
Right.
And so they're going to bat for the client during the design process. So now you're engaging this contractor to work with you to massage even the scope of work.
Yeah.
And the design that you come up with to manage your budget.
Right.
Rather than the other way around of paying me or paying an architect to do the design work up front, then tendering it out only to realize, crap, it's twice as much as I want to spend. Now we've got to go back to the designer or architect, rework the design, pay them more money. So I keep telling the client, my process now is conceptual design is done first.
Yeah.
Then especially if it's a reno in my case, I pause and I say, okay, now let's do a budget scope of work based on what we now know the design work to be. We even know at that stage, without knowing the exact make and model of the material, we know it's going to be hardwood floor or tile floor or natural stone floor, if it's going to be a feature stone wall or if it's going to be a painted wall. We know all that at that stage. Yeah. We can tell the contractor, who can then come back to the client with a much more accurate 30,000 foot picture on what the budget's going to be before we continue to make all the selections or finalize the drawings. Yeah. So now we've not wasted the client's money on us. See what I'm getting at?
Yeah.
And so therefore, the money the client's maybe invested in the contractor is really well used at that early stage in the game because now he's so involved in it. And then through the construction stage of the job, he's now much more aware of what the design intent was from the beginning and can manage it.
Do you think that and maybe I'm using this wrong, but do you feel that this is sort of like a trusted advisor role?
Absolutely.
And your circle, you'd bring in people that you trust. Yeah. Ergo the client will trust you to bring in the right people for the job.
I mean, I see that what we are is trusted advisors because ultimately when it comes down to what the deliverables are, whether it's a contractor, what they build for a client, or me, what I design for a client, our deliverables are the same. Yeah. And it's not bricks and mortar. Huh. I'm pausing there for dramatic effect.
All right.
Because of the fact that really what we ultimately do is we help like a busy family, maybe mom and dad with 3 kids, we help those parents organize their home better, giving more storage space for all that kid stuff. The end result is the parents have more time for themselves, more space to think, more calmness in the household. That's the ultimate deliverable in that example. Right.
So it's not about a thing.
It's not about the bricks and mortar.
Yeah.
What we actually do for people is we make life beautiful. That's my tagline. It's not just that we make it aesthetically beautiful. It's not really meant for that. It's actually more meant on we make your life better. Yeah. How you live your life better. We have clients who come to me still after 5 years of having designed a house and they've lived in it for 5 years now. They keep coming back to us going, we can't believe how it's changed our life.
Wow.
How we live our life now is different to how we lived our life before all of this. And you and your team, and of course the contractor who built it, made this happen.
That's outstanding.
It is. I mean, that's where you get the warm and fuzzies. It's not that you've made a beautiful home, and of course, yes, interior designers, we post pictures of beautiful interiors, but that's not really what the end result was. That's just what Instagram sees.
Sure.
What Instagram does not see is the client we did that for and why that was amazing for them and why it changed their life.
And day-to-day stuff that suddenly makes all the difference.
Yeah.
Right? How did I live like that before?
Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. It was fantastic.
Blah, blah, blah.
That's so much fun. All right, so industry expert in the wings. That's your trajectory.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
you're doing stuff. You're doing some speaking. You're trying to work on workshops. In between your busy life. Hopefully, we'll get to see you do some speaking here locally. Because you're such an engaging human.
Thank you.
I like your voice. I love your energy, and I like your message of designing for living. As opposed to just stuff.
Exactly.
Because I'm so done with stuff.
Oh, I know.
Right.
And people don't need stuff. And that's the thing is like some people, to anybody listening who does not have a large home, that's not just what we do.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not about the size of the home.
Right.
I personally don't live in a large home at all.
Yeah.
But it's like, what is your specific lifestyle? Where can an architect or designer make that better? And then a contractor, of course, who actually executes the work. And it's sometimes not a massive change. It's sometimes a simple fix. Right. And so I can get as excited about that small, simple fix as I can about the client who is building the 7,000 square foot home in the mountains, because ultimately I've helped somebody enhance their life.
Love it.
And it's not just because we've made the house prettier. I gotta stress that. It's really not about that. It's how you live in that home or space. And then how does that and make your life and your experience of living better? You know, gives you less stress, more peace of mind, more time with your family, more time to entertain. A lot of people, when they do a kitchen, they want it to, I say to them, envision how you're going to use this when you're finished. Well, I want to entertain like 20 people. I want to do this. So we have to make a space that they can do that in, right?
Your tagline is not make houses beautiful, make kitchens
it's make
beautiful.
Life beautiful.
Yeah, and I just love that. I think it's outstanding. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
So how neat is that to like have that
fun.
as your mantle, as the thing that you charge after?
Yeah,
I love it.
You were going somewhere there, so continue.
No, I'm into segue mode because now you said that you love mountains. That's like mountains and trees and stuff. Are you a skier?
I am.
Are you?
I love skiing. The ironic thing here, which is why I'm laughing now, is I haven't skied in 5 years because I had a skiing injury. I have some back problems. I've had it for many years, and I had a skiing accident 5 years ago, and I haven't skied since then. And I've been sort of desperate to get out and do that because it's one of the sports that I can actually do really well. And I love doing it because one thing I love about skiing is you can do it on your own, or you can do it with a group, or you can do it with your family. It's a very collaborative sport, although it's not a team sport. What I love about it is you can do it now. I can do it with my nieces and nephews and family members of all ages. And you can get together with a group of kids from the age of like 3 to like 75, and you can all participate in the same thing. That's one thing I love about skiing. It's a very family-oriented sport. But I haven't skied in 5 years because I had an accident, and it was such a galling accident because I'm going, like it wasn't like a great big huge wipeout. I was going down the hill, 6 inches of fresh powder on the packed under on a substrate, and I'm skiing down, and I just caught an edge, and I spun like a spinning top. I didn't actually fall head over heels. I spun, so I was standing up in a vertical position, and I was spinning, but my legs and my skis were spinning faster than my upper body, and my whole spine zippered. Jesus. And so I had to be stretchered off the hill, and needless to say, since then I haven't skied because I have a small business. I'm reticent to go and then have this happen again and be in bed for 2 weeks. So I haven't skied, but I do love skiing, but I love the mountains. So in the summer I get out there as much as I can to, you know, just hike and walk and do that kind of thing, because I find there's something about, like, again, living in the UK, there's hill walking that I could do beautiful. I loved hill walking in the UK, but it was not as, there's something about going into the mountains where the air is that much fresher. It's that much quieter. It's just more awe-inspiring. You know, there's something that gets you in the gut when you go to the mountains. And so I love going there. So even just going up to Canmore for an afternoon, and even going for coffee is better than nothing. So I sometimes do that. I sometimes take my dog, you know, walking in the mountains, short little hikes, you know.
Kind of dog?
I got a little Norfolk Terrier.
Oh, fun.
Always loved dogs. And grew up with them as, you know, as a kid. We had we got some dogs from our friend's farm, like, you know, farm mutts, Heinz 57 varieties. But then about five years ago, I got this dog. It had been I hadn't had a dog since I moved to the UK. So I hadn't had a dog for a period of maybe about 10 years or more before I got this one. And I got this little Norfolk Terrier. So she's a lot of fun. Norfolk Terriers are they're very character dogs.
What's her name?
Dora.
Dora.
Dora the Explorer. Yeah, she was named after Dora the Explorer, actually. I got her when she was 3 years old. She was already named. I thought, I am not going through the hassle of trying to teach the dog about the new name, so I'm just going to use that name. But yes, her name was Dora. Her brother's name was Diego, named after the cartoon characters.
Amazing.
But what's great about that dog is that breed is they're very independent in a lot of ways. They're not a lap dog. They're not clingy, usually speaking.
Kind of like part cat.
Yeah, kinda. But they are they want to talk with you all the time. They're very much talkers. And so they'll come up to you and announce things. Somebody's at the door, blah, 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 you know, bark, 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 bark. And of course, you know, people in the house, they know that people see you, but they will still run back and forth a million times announcing you. And then when somebody does come into the house, they will actually talk to them.
Wow.
It's difficult for me to do the sound, but they'll actually sort of, it sounds kind of halfway between dog singing and barking.
Interesting.
And she'll do that when
got
somebody
stuff to say.
comes into the house because she's trying to talk to you.
Right. Here's
know?
the bathroom, and don't hang up your coat here. And
We will make life beautiful.
Oh, nice. On message.
Yeah, exactly.
All the time. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I think one of the there's so many great parts about the show. Meeting people obviously is one of them. Finding out your story and your particular rebellion and what gets you up in the morning is amazing. But so there's these people that live out in the world that are sometimes stuck doing what they're doing, whether it's their own small business that they didn't realize that they're, when they got into it, they're like, oh, it's not kind of what I want.
Yeah.
Or you're stuck behind a desk in an office, or you're pumping gas and you're like, oh, I've got this great idea. I call these people rebels in waiting.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
What advice would you give, knowing what you know now, having been through the wars in some ways? What advice would you give to these people to take their next step or their big first step?
Okay, so there's two categories of people you mentioned there. Can you just repeat them again? There was a person who is sitting at a desk, and there's maybe another person who's sort of has their own small business.
Yeah, well, there's three actually.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
there's the guy pumping gas. So,
Okay,
and then
yes.
there's the person sitting behind the desk.
Yeah.
Then there's the person who started their own business and maybe realized that it's not quite the business they wanted.
Right. Okay,
Yeah.
got it. Okay, so let's deal with that one first because that hits close to home.
Yeah, okay.
Because one thing that I will say to the person who's thinking about starting their business first, I should say, is that if you're thinking of starting your own business and you've got an idea, first of all, believe in yourself and believe in the power of your idea, but do not get so carried away with that idea that you're not running it past somebody else first.
Smart.
Because you need to vet that idea because we all have ideas. Some are great, some are good, and some are okay. Keep in mind that if you are trying to go out into a world to compete with other businesses and your idea is just kind of good, well, do you really think your business is going to be that successful?
Yeah.
You need to have an incredibly strong business case. And I cannot stress enough that one thing that would be highly important for anybody to do who is about to start a business is consider doing a business accelerator program. I want to talk about one in particular. I know I'm not being paid to do this, but I bank at Alberta Treasury Bank, ATB.
Yep.
And
they're great.
They're excellent. And they have done something that, as far as I'm concerned, hands down beats all the big five banks by 10 miles.
Yeah.
In fact, I think
Listening to RBC.
I think it's in a different galaxy, honestly. Yeah. They have done something called the Entrepreneur Program, an Entrepreneur Center.
Right.
So here in Calgary and one in Edmonton, they have an entrepreneur, one branch that is dedicated to entrepreneurialism.
Right.
So you can go there, and every single week you can go there now. You don't have to be registered with them. You can go there and get free seminars weekly that are all to do with supporting small business. It could be on any subject from sales to how do I staff my business to how do I even come up with a business plan. And they have speakers that come in from outside the bank and speak about these topics free of charge so you can just listen and get ideas.
I was just there last week speaking on branding.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So
love these guys.
They're awesome for how they do it. And then, so if you want to take it a step further, they now have a program called is it called Project X?
Oh, yes, the business ATBX.
ATBX, thank you.
ATBX, yeah.
So I actually had the privilege of going through this a few years ago.
Oh, fun.
And it's excellent because they take you in as a small business. They help you craft your branding, craft your message, craft your focus even.
Yeah.
Because see, at that time I was a small business. I still had my business, but I was struggling because we had a down year. And they're going, how do I recraft my brand? That's when I really got into really nailing down the timber frame niche in my case. Yeah. In my case, being that I was competitive, I'm an interior designer. That in itself is not entrepreneurial. Everybody and their dog that is out there doing interior design are essentially doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So how do I make myself different? What is your differentiator? Because if you're just going to start a business and you don't know what your differentiator is or how to actually market it, don't do it.
Right.
Work on that first before you do it. So to the people that have then actually started their business and they're now in their business, and like me and you, Mike, you realize that once you've started your own business, you have that moment when you go, oh crap, why did I do this? Right? What am I doing this for? Because you realize that in having your own small business, it brings out your strengths, but it enhances your weaknesses.
Truth.
So you either have to very quickly get on top of your weaknesses and yourself train for them, or hire somebody who can prop up your weaknesses.
Yeah, for sure.
So, in my case, I am not good at accounting. I understand the basics, but literally that is it.
Yep.
And so I know what needs to happen in my business in order for us to be able to keep cash flow going, for example. But the nitty-gritty of accounting, of course, I had to outsource all that.
Yeah.
And bookkeeping, etc. And the people that I have now are great, and that's what keeps the business running as well.
Right.
On the other sides of your business, you have to learn. Are you good at doing sales? I mean, I do like connecting with people. I'm good at engaging people, so I'm not nervous about talking to people. But if you have a great business idea and how you can make this work, but you're not confident in selling it and you're not great at selling it, you might want to consider bringing somebody else in to help you with that, even if it's not on a full-time basis, maybe a part-time basis. So to the people that are in their own business but are not entirely happy, you need to maybe pivot your business to a different focus. You need to use what I've just said about, business accelerator programs, or even private mentors or private business coaches, or just talking to people that you trust in the business world, not just always friends and family, because friends and family will tell you your idea is great and they will not be necessarily able to give you the business advice you need to turn things around.
Yeah, maybe not so objective.
No, I mean, they might be able to tell you things like, we knew you wouldn't be able to do it, or we thought that was a crazy idea. They might be honest with you in that way, or be able to tell you, we don't think you're doing the right thing, but they're not necessarily going to be able to tell you what's right for you to do. That's been my experience anyway. They love you, they want to help you, they want to make it work for you, but they're not necessarily the best people to help you pivot and make the change. So if you're in your own small business and you're not happy with where you're at, you need to either take the same business you're in and recraft the branding of it and make the focus of it completely different. Or maybe you're in the wrong business in the first place.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. And that's, because maybe you're selling tires and really what you love is rims.
So to the guy that's pumping gas, that's maybe, let's call it, maybe he loves pumping gas. Maybe that is his calling. But if it isn't his calling and he's going, I'm just pumping gas to kill time, then if you have an idea, don't underestimate the fact that everybody does have an idea. And I want to just point out something too. Do not be fooled or lulled into thinking that having a 9-to-5 job is job security.
Right. Great point.
You're only guaranteed 2 weeks worth of wages. Something could drastically happen in the company that you're in. I'm not trying to paint a horror story here, but it's fact of life.
It's legit.
I mean, whether it's a large company or a small company, something could happen that's completely beyond anyone's control, that suddenly, blammo, they have to lay people off. You're only guaranteed 2 weeks' wages.
Wow.
And so if you think about it in that perspective, you realize that there's really not much sense of thinking about it as, I need to have a full-time job because I've got job security. Now, that's for cash flow and a paycheck coming in. Certainly, if you're the kind of person that, isn't suited to going out and being entrepreneurial and starting your own business, then certainly having a 9-to-5 job is a very noble thing. I'm not knocking that. I'm just saying that if you are, I guess what I am saying is, if you're scared to take the first step into your own business or even a side business, just keep looking at the fact that you're only guaranteed 2 weeks' salary. Something could change in 2 weeks' time. So if you have an idea that you think is a good idea that you want to, propagate, don't be afraid to do that, because you are probably your own worst enemy. Our self-talk, that's another thing you learn when you're in your own business. It's probably the worst, is that it's usually yourself that's you sort of talking about this and talking about that's bad and what will go bad and what you're not good at. Really? You've got an innate talent somewhere. Everybody does. Everybody's got their own unique thing. It's just a case of finding it. Some people know it right from a very early age. Other people don't hit it until they're in their teens. Other people don't hit it till they're in their 50s. But I mean, if you have got an idea that would either give you more fulfillment, not necessarily give you a $200,000 a year salary, but if you've got something that can pay the bills and make you live fairly comfortably, and you've got a great idea, why not try it?
What do you got to lose?
Because that's what I felt. I mean, what was it? well, it's 9 years now since I started my own business. And I thought at that point, like I was in my early 40s. And I thought, for me personally, after having done a lot of time working for other firms, both in Canada and in the UK, and learning a lot myself, I thought if I don't do this now, I probably never will.
Right.
Because I'll get to the point where I just can't be bothered putting the energy into it. Because let's face it, as you all know, you do have to put energy emotionally and physically into starting a business. And it does take a lot out of you, but the rewards are so much more than that.
Absolutely. Well said. Damn. This has been an absolute joy. Thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Thanks for letting me ramble.
Loved it. Until next time.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening. And thanks again to the Friday Sock Company. Speaking of which, coming up this week in a special episode, I sit down with the founder of the Friday Sock Company, Adam Thompson, and we talk socks. Sock talk. That's right. Sock talk right here on Rebel Rebel. So don't forget to subscribe. Until next time.